Alright, back again, Luke here. And as you can see in front of you, today we have an arcade PCB. This is a early Namco Pac-Land board. And this is a board that I've had for quite some time. It's one that I had received as a kind of gift slash trade from a really good friend overseas in the UK. And he sent this out to me. He said that he had it for about 35 years or so, around that time. It had been sitting in his stack of boards, and he wasn't sure if it was working or not. So he said, you know, if I was up for it, I could have this one, and there were a couple other boards as well. But this one in particular was one that I was kind of interested in. And I had never had a chance to really play it much. So we wound up doing the trade. I got this in, and it's been at least 3 months or longer since I wound up getting this. And what originally had happened, when I turned the power on, I realized that there was no movement at all on it. There was a lot of kind of dirt and grime that was caked up on this. I actually cleaned most of it off, but a lot of the chips here were quite rusted, and many of them, in some areas, the sockets had been ripped off, or the sockets were broken. I replaced a lot of these really fine 64-pin sockets here, which was quite tricky to get everything out, but I got those replaced, tried to resocket RAM and whatnot, and finally got the thing to power up. Once again here, just to show you, this is what it was doing beforehand. It was only giving kind of like blocky backgrounds, sometimes missing backgrounds, and similar to this when I first got everything kind of put back together. And I started going over the board. With these boards, they'll come up with an error, so you'll get it like an error code at the beginning when you first turn it on. There's a ghost and it'll say like 004 or 51, or each error code kind of represents some kind of part on the board that has a problem. Error code, I think 400 means like a RAM error, and some of the other errors, I can't remember. I checked a few of them out online, but was able to find that this thing was shooting up all sorts of errors, and there was no consistency with it. So after once again kind of pushing on some of these chips, I realized that the chips, the legs on them were quite rusted. I tried to go over them and clean them up a little bit. You can see there's still some discoloration, and some areas here, these ones are still a bit dirty as well. But for the most part, got them in place and replaced the sockets that were really bad on it. Turned it on, got the thing to fire up with the graphic glitches, and then as there was no particular error, if there's no error at all, it'll come up with 000. And I was starting to think, okay, so we've got RAM up here, there's no RAM errors, and if there was any RAM error at all, it would probably be over on this side. This is where most of the error is, or the RAM is for the graphics, the foreground, background, system, everything like that is kind of held over here on the right. So luckily I was able to, you know, rule out the fact that there were no RAM errors. But I got down here to these chips here. These contain all of the graphics, they're the graphic ROMs. And I got up to PL14 and realized when I took it out there was no real change. When I put it back in there was no real change, so I reburned it, tried to put in another one, and still nothing. I went around looking at the different sockets and came up to PL13. This is PL13, I think it's listed as E. In the main ROM files. Luckily I was able to get some ROM files for this game from a good friend Chris, and he was able to help me kind of resolve the issues with this. So I wound up burning a new EEPROM here. The old one, as you may notice, may be kind of hard to see, but this leg was kind of chewed up a little bit. It was kind of rusted off. The other side, there were a couple of legs. I don't know if this thing will... Where is it? One of them is a little shorter. This one here was a little bit shorter than the usual legs, and that was causing some issues. On the backside too, there was a lot of rust, so this chip in and on itself was not reading. Even though I'd replaced the socket on it, was not able to get anything to work. So what I did is I picked up another one. This is listed as a, what is it, 27128, but one that'll also work is a 27C128A, so reburn that, put that in there, and yeah, to kind of make a long story short here, everything seems to be working okay, so figured we could fire this thing on and let you guys take a look at it, show you what it's doing. Normally I'll come up with this garbage here. You can see it says A00, that's upside down, and it's normally like that, but the Pac-Land logo, everything like that is on there. If some RAM is bad, it'll just continuously keep resetting itself, but You can see we've got background graphics here. Everything is solid now. As I said before, it was nothing, so pop in a couple of credits here just to start it up. And give it a shot here. But yeah, everything looks good. So this is another board here that has been saved from the grave. I gotta try and do a little bit more wiring with the controls because they're not perfect yet. It's still kind of coming up with some issues when you go to put in coins or move sometimes. So I'm gonna try and see if I can rewire that a little bit. And once I get this thing completely fixed up, I'll probably make a video on it and do some gameplay here. But yeah, at least it's working much better than what it was doing before. If you guys are having any problems with the Pac-Land board, I know that a lot of these things suffer from mostly chips that have been like kind of corroded, or the sockets that have been eaten away or rusted away. These sockets here are quite a pain to remove. There's a lot of legs on them, so you really got to be careful when you do remove them. But just in general, with these boards, those seem to be the most common problems. I have seen people talk about how chips up here, like the, 298N or the 74LS30 chip over on this side, as well as maybe the 00LS00, are sometimes the culprit as far as background graphics or glitching graphics. But if you have any problem with graphic errors or the things popping up with a lot of the different codes, you might want to come over here and check some of the RAM on the side and try and cross-reference those numbers to the ones that you can find on the internet. But yeah, nonetheless, just want to share a little bit of a repair/update video with you guys here on this board. And yeah, once we get everything working right, we'll try and get this up and do some gameplay on it. But that's about all for me for right now. Like always, I'll put up another video here soon, so thanks for watching. Watching some Pac-Land. Whee!